So tonight, Stephen Colbert, man, that was him and Spielberg. That was wonderful. I'm not usually a late night talk show watcher too much. You know, obviously Kimmel and Tom Cruise the other night too were. I mean, that's whoa. Um, but I was talking to Keith, and I were sitting here watching Colbert, and you can tell why you know the country is so sick of dealing with COVID and crap, and the guys who entertain us on any level, and you can tell they're all stepping up, um, because Steven Spielberg has never done a late night show ever, ever. He's a master storyteller, you know, and Spielberg, what he said, especially when Colbert asked him about UFOs at the end there, and they're finishing that story even next week because they interviewed Spielberg at his Amblin offices, um, and they didn't have time um, to finish the story on tonight's Colbert show. So they're gonna do more next week. Actually, tells you a lot. But what he said about UFOs, what Spielberg said, especially since he's done Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. obviously, um, and it's funny what Colbert told him if you haven't watched it yet. At the end, um, what Spielberg said in his opinion has always been my exact opinion, and except for that I actually have seen. That was the only thing that was different. He knew enough to do Close Encounters and how close that is to stories that are told by people that have had close encounters. Um, but he has never had one. I have when I was younger, like legitimate, and could have been just because we were near Point Magoo, the base where my dad was working, and what I saw is what I saw, and was very unexplainable. Really, what I saw. The whole experience was um, pretty pretty strange. Um, but his take, and I hope you guys look. I'm sure there's gonna be clips of what he said. Is really amazing because even the movie that he didn't do, it's called Fire in the Sky. Um, it's about these um, this logging crew back in the early 70s. Is it late 60s or early 70s? It's late 60s. Yeah, his name's Travis Rogers. When you watch that movie, and he's been on Rogan, you know, Travis has. And what happened to him, he says, when you watch Fire in the Sky, is exactly what happened to him. He's made no money off it, None of those guys have. They passed all their lie detector tests. They always have. There's no way a logging crew back then was going to come up with some weird story like that. Hell no. And so the reason I'm making that bridge is when Steven said, when Spielberg said, he said, and his take's amazing. He goes, how come how did he put it? He didn't say how come. He said, what if it's a really interesting take, and it's for him to just off the cuff say what he said. And this relates to Travis. What he said is, what if it's just like, it's us, like millions of light years away, coming back and just documenting like us on this planet as like we're other humans, but they're so much more advanced than us. They're not coming here for our resources. He goes, they're not coming here to do anything like evil, because they don't need to do that. They could have burned us to a cinder already if they wanted to. And this is my point with Fire in the Sky, which Travis said famously. He goes, in that movie, he goes, the one thing they didn't do back then, the movie came out like in the 80s, early 90s, I think. He said, when I was taking a board, he goes, sure, were the little green guy clone things that people think they're maybe just their form of almost a robot that helps them. He goes, the one thing they didn't show when I was taken off the ship, when I got out of there, he said there was a man and a woman. Two of them, and they even said, he said they had helmets on, even. And they looked very, almost like Swedish, but very defined, bigger eyes. You know, like very, not fake beautiful, like just naturally just beautiful. These two blonde people. And he said, yeah, they took me and then they dropped me off, and I woke up at that gas station, and that's when the guys found me, and nobody got arrested, because they all thought, the town and everybody who investigated thought the logging crew guys had killed them, you know, for really lame reasons too. But he said they didn't put that, and there's a documentary about it too, about Travis Rogers. But he said he said they didn't put that one aspect in the movie back then, because it was so realistic that if you're even in Hollywood for a film, at the time, like now they could put that part in the movie, that happening. But he goes, at the time, is what it is too. You're telling a story, and it's the world wasn't ready for that. But Spielberg said he's so proud that, you know, it's the Navy's reporting this stuff. You know, there's senators and people that are asking about this type of stuff, and they're saying, you know, People need to know, like, do the Freedom of Information Act and like on it, and because the world is ready, like we're seeing this stuff, and it's like we're not dumb. Just tell us what you know, whether it be like the book The Day After Roswell and all that stuff. And that's another amazing one. Is that book, The Day After Roswell, with what the guy's saying in that, and he was an army intelligence guy, like the lead one for us at one point with Trudeau. So that guy wrote the book, that book. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. But I'm proud that he said we're ready, and out of probably the best filmmaker ever in the history of this planet. I mean, but there's no probably. He is. And interesting stuff going on in the skies, isn't there, you guys? You know, interesting stuff.